A long time ago, in a land of enchanted woods called Verdel, a gentle maiden named Elena lived with a skip in her step. The village nestled snugly at the forest's edge, its cottages woven with ivy, surrounded by meadows of wildflowers and whispering trees. Elena's little home sat on a quiet lane, its windows bright with woven curtains she'd made herself. She lived alone with her gran, a warm woman with tales of magic, until the old woman's voice fell silent one spring. Elena loved the woods most of all. She wandered there daily, gathering berries and singing tunes that made the birds chirp back, her patched skirt swaying as she moved. In the village lived Mara, a weaver with a sharp eye and sharper tongue. Her looms spun threads of silver and gold, and her cottage gleamed with treasures she hoarded close. Mara's beauty shone cold, but her heart twisted with envy whenever Elena passed by. Her gentle songs and kind smiles drew every eye. "Too sweet," Mara muttered one day, watching Elena share berries with children. "Too bright." The weaver's jealousy grew with every note Elena sang, every laugh she shared, until it coiled tight inside her. One sunny morning, Elena strolled toward the market with a basket of flowers, her voice lilting through the air. Mara stepped from her cottage with a basket of her own, silver threads glinting within, and her eyes narrowed as villagers waved to Elena. "Enough," Mara whispered, her voice low and cold. She followed Elena to the market's edge, where the woods stretched wide, and waited until the girl paused by a stream. "Your songs tire me," Mara said sharply, stepping close. "Leave Verdel, or I'll weave a shadow over you." Elena blinked with her gentle heart steady. "I mean no harm," she replied softly. Mara's smile twisted thin. "Go, or you'll wish you had." Elena's steps faltered as she turned away, her basket trembling in her hands. Mara's words clung like thorns, and the village's warmth faded under that cold gaze. She wandered from the market with her song silenced, the woods calling louder than ever. "Gran would know," she murmured, thinking of the old tales. Safety lay beyond thorns. She slipped past the last cottage, her patched skirt catching on brambles, and stepped into Verdel's enchanted woods. The trees closed around her with a whispering hush, tall oaks, twisty pines, their leaves glinting gold in the sun. Elena walked deeper as the path wound through mossy stones and babbling brooks. Her gentle spirit lifted with each step, though Mara's threat lingered in her mind. Birds flitted above, their chirps guiding her on, until a rustle stirred the undergrowth. She paused by a thicket, and voices, small, gruff, drifted out. "Who's there?" one called, sharp but curious. Elena peeked through leaves and saw a tiny figure, no taller than her knee, with a hat of bark and a coat of moss. "Just me," she said with a gentle smile. "I needed the woods today." Another figure stepped out, stout with a beard of twigs, and then three more, each quirky, their eyes bright. "Lost?" the first asked, hat tilting. Elena shook her head. "Hiding, maybe." A third, with a cape of feathers, chuckled low. "Good spot, this wood's ours." Elena's gentle heart warmed. "Yours." A fourth, with boots of leaves, nodded. "We mend what's broken, call me Patch." The fifth, smallest, with a scarf of petals, grinned. "I'm Sprig, welcome." Elena sat with them as dusk settled, the woods glowing soft. Patch offered moss tea, and Sprig shared nuts. Her gentle song returned, quiet and sweet. Verdel hummed with life as her fabulous escape bloomed, safe haven found for now. Night fell softly over Verdel, the enchanted woods glowing with a silver sheen beneath a starry sky. Elena sat in the thicket with her new friends, her patched skirt spread across the mossy ground as she sipped moss tea from a tiny cup. The air hummed with a gentle warmth, and her kind heart settled into the woodland's embrace, safe from Mara's cold words for now. Patch stirred a pot over a small fire, his bark hat tilted as he hummed a gruff tune. Sprig nibbled a nut beside her, his petal scarf fluttering with each cheerful bite. 3 more figures bustled around, Stitch with his feather cape weaving a net from vines, Flint with his twig beard carving a spoon from oak, and Twirl with her leaf boots spinning a twig like a top. Elena smiled at them with a gentle glow. This feels like home already. Patch stirred the pot and nodded gruffly. Woods take care of their own. Sprig grinned and tossed her another nut. You're one of us now. Stitch looked up from his net with a quiet chuckle. Sing again, it's nice. Flint carved a smooth curve and agreed softly. Keeps the trees happy. Twirl spun her twig faster and laughed brightly. Makes us happy too. Elena's kind spirit lifted as she sang a soft tune, her voice weaving through the thicket. Birds chirped back, leaves rustled, Verdel's hum joined in. Patch set the pot aside and sat with a creak. Why'd you run? Elena's song paused as she lowered her eyes. Mara the Weaver didn't like me singing or smiling. She told me to leave Verdel. Sprig's nut stopped mid-bite with a curious tilt. Just that. Stitch's net stilled as he frowned. Sounds jealous. Flint carved slower and nodded. Some hearts twist tight. Twirl spun her twig to a stop with a gentle frown. She's mean, I'd sing louder. Elena smiled faintly and sipped her tea. I couldn't stay. Gran's gone, she'd have known what to do. The thicket glowed as they listened. Patch poured more tea, Sprig shared nuts, Stitch tied a knot, Flint carved, Twirl spun. All cozy, all close. Elena's gentle tune returned, softer now. Verdel's woods wrapped her safe. Stay long as you like, Patch said with a gruff nod. We mend broken things, people too. Sprig grinned and patted her hand. You're not broken, just hiding. Elena's kind heart warmed, she belonged here for now. Back in the village, Mara paced her cottage, silver threads glinting in the lantern light. Elena's absence gnawed at her, villagers whispered her name, missed her songs. Too sweet, Mara hissed, her sharp eyes flashing. She pulled a spool of dark thread from her hoard and spun it tight, her jealousy coiled. Gaunt's not enough, she'll fade. The loom clicked as she wove a shadow, not cloth, not thread, but a whisper thin and cold, drifting toward Verdel's woods. Her spite took shape, Mara smiled thinly. No song soon. In the thicket, Elena slept on moss, her crew nestled close. Patch snored, Sprig curled, Stitch draped his net, Flint clutched his spoon, Twirl hugged her twig, Verdel hummed, moonlight glowed. Elena's gentle refuge bloomed, safe, warm, yet Mara's whisper crept, soft, unseen. Wood stirred, Elena dreamed, her fabulous tale grew, kindness held, night deepened. Moonlight waned over Verdel as dawn crept through the enchanted woods, painting the thicket with a golden glow. Elena woke on her mossy bed, her patched skirt soft against the earth as she stretched with a gentle yawn. The woodland band stirred around her. Patch stoked the fire with a gruff hum, Sprig sorted nuts with a chirpy grin, Stitch wove his vine net with quiet focus, Flint carved a new spoon from oak, and Twirl spun a twig in lazy circles. Her kind heart warmed at their bustling cheer, safe from Mara's sharp words in this cozy haven. Patch handed her a cup of moss tea with a nod. Slept well. Eleanor sipped and smiled softly. Better than ever. Sprig tossed her a nut and grinned wider. Woods kept you snug. Stitch tied a knot in his net and chuckled low. Sang all night too, heard it. Flint smoothed his spoon with a steady hand. Trees like you here. Twirl spun her twig faster and laughed brightly. We like you too. Eleanor's gentle spirit lifted as she hummed a tune, her voice blending with the rustling leaves. Verdell hummed back, the thicket glowed, her refuge felt alive. She rose and helped Patch stir a pot of stew, her kind hands quick with herbs. Sprig gathered twigs for the fire, chattering about berries. Stitch hung his net over a branch to catch morning dew, his quiet grin steady. Flint carved tiny flowers into his spoon and nodded at her song. Twirl danced around them, spinning her twig like a wand. Eleanor laughed, her gentle joy spilling free. Verdell's woods wrapped them close, cozy warm, her crew bustled, her haven bloomed. In the village, Mara sat at her loom, silver threads glinting in the dim light. Eleanor's absence fueled her envy. Villagers missed her songs, whispered her kindness. Too sweet, Mara hissed, her sharp eyes flashing. Her dark thread spun tight, a shadow whisper, drifted from her cottage overnight, curling through Verdell's edge. She smiled thinly and pulled a jar from her hoard, small glass filled with mist. Fade her, she murmured, pouring it onto her loom. The mist thickened, grey cold, swirling into a shroud, not cloth, not thread, but a chill creeping toward the woods. Her jealousy took form. Mara's loom clicked, no songs left. The shroud slipped through Verdell, soft and unseen. Trees shivered, leaves dulled, Eleanor's thicket stirred. Patch paused his stirring, his gruff voice low. Air's odd. Sprig dropped a nut and tilted his head. Cold now. Stitch's net sagged, his grin fading. Something's creeping. Flint set his spoon down with a quiet frown. Feels heavy. Twirl stopped spinning and hugged her twig. Woods aren't happy. Eleanor's gentle tune faltered, her kind heart sank. A chill brushed her. Verdell's hum weakened. What's this? She murmured, standing slow. The shroud thickened, grey mist coiled. Trees drooped, her crew gathered, eyes wide. Cozy haven trembled. Patch squinted through the mist with a gruff grunt. Not natural, someone's meddling. Sprig shivered and tucked his nuts close. Mean trick. Stitch pulled his net tight with a steady nod. Shadows don't belong here. Flint gripped his spoon and frowned deeper. Hurts the roots. Twirl twirled her twig slow with a gentle sigh. Makes me sleepy. Eleanor's kind spirit steadied. She hummed again. Soft, brave. Verdell's hum flickered. We'll fix it, she said quietly. Her crew nodded. The shroud crept, chill deepened. Her gentle refuge wavered. Mara's whisper neared. Wood sighed. Eleanor's song held. Fabulous fight bloomed. Night softened. Hope lingered. Morning light struggled through Verdell's enchanted woods as the thicket sat dim under a grey shroud that dulled the golden glow. Eleanor stood by the dwindling fire with her patched skirt brushing the moss. She hummed a soft tune to lift the chill. Her kind heart pulsed with gentle resolve. Mara's whisper weighed heavy, but she wouldn't let it stay. Patch stirred the pot with a gruff frown while his bark hat rested low over his eyes. Sprig huddled close with his petal scarf limp. He cradled a nut in his small hands. Stitch wove his vine net tighter as his quiet grin faded from his face. Flint carved a spoon with slow strokes while his twig beard stayed stiff. Twirl sat still with her leaf boots flat. Her twig rested quietly in her lap. Elena spoke with a gentle and steady voice. "We need to push this shadow back." Patch nodded over the pot. "Woods don't like it." Sprig tucked his nut away with a small shiver. "Cold hurts." Stitch pulled a knot firm and looked up. "We can mend this too." Flint smoothed his spoon and murmured agreement. "Roots need cheer." Twirl lifted her twig with a faint smile. "I'll spin it away." Elena's kind spirit warmed as she hummed louder. Her voice wove through the mist. Verdel's hum flickered. The thicket stirred. Her crew rose with hope glimmering in their eyes. Patch set the pot aside and rubbed his hands. "Fire's weak. It needs more." Sprig hopped up and gathered twigs with a chirpy nod. "I'll find dry ones." Stitch slung his net over his shoulder with a quiet chuckle. "I'll catch the mist and trap it." Flint tucked his spoon away and stood tall. "I'll carve a path to clear it." Twirl spun her twig slow and grinned softly. "I'll dance it out since light lifts." Elena clapped her hands with a gentle smile. "We'll fix it together." Her crew bustled as the shroud coiled around them. Verdel's woods trembled with their efforts. Her refuge fought back against the chill. They worked swiftly under the gray shroud. Patch piled twigs until the fire flared. Sprig stacked more and watched the flames climb high. Stitch tossed his net into the air, and the mist curled into its vines. Flint carved roots until sap flowed free. Twirl danced with her twig spinning gracefully. Elena sang with a gentle and strong voice. Verdel's hum pulsed through the thicket. The shroud thinned as trees sighed with relief. Light seeped into the clearing. The thicket glowed with cozy warmth once more. Her kind song led the way as her crew smiled with hope blooming in their hearts. In the village, Mara sat at her loom where silver threads lay dull under a flickering lantern. Elena's refuge stung her heart. Villagers missed the girl's presence. "Too sweet," Mara hissed with her sharp eyes flashing. She pulled a jar of mist from her hoard and poured it slowly. "Stay gone," she murmured as the thicker mist spilled out. Her loom clicked with a steady rhythm. The gray shroud swelled into a dark whisper that drifted from her cottage. It curled through Verdel's edge until the woods shivered under its touch. Her jealousy tightened with each turn of the wheel. "No songs left," she said with a thin smile. Her shadow stretched further as her spite deepened. Elena's light dimmed under the growing chill. The thicket flared with Patch's fire roaring strong. Sprig's twigs crackled in the heat. Stitch's net sagged with trapped mist. Flint's roots gleamed with fresh sap. Twirl's dance spun with a joyful twirl. Elena's song soared high and clear. Verdel's hum swelled through the air. The shroud pushed back with a biting chill. Trees drooped slightly under its weight. Elena's gentle spirit stayed firm as she murmured quietly, "We need it stronger." Her crew gathered close around her. Patch stoked the flames with steady hands. Sprig piled more twigs into the blaze. Stitch wove his net tighter with focus. Flint carved deeper into the roots. Twirl twirled her twig with a gentle bounce. Elena sang with all her heart as kindness pulsed through her voice. The shroud faltered under their efforts. Mist curled away from the thicket. Light spread wider until the cozy glow fought off the chill. Verdel's song rose with a quiet strength. Her gentle refuge shimmered once more. Mara's whisper strained against their warmth. The woods breathed freely as Elena's fabulous tune bloomed with hope shining through the night. Sunrise crept over Verdel as the enchanted woods shimmered faintly under a gray veil that lingered despite the thicket's glow. Elena sat by the fire with her patched skirt tucked beneath her. She stirred a pot of stew with a gentle hand. Her kind heart stayed steady. Mara's shroud pressed harder, but her song held it back. Patch chopped twigs with a gruff hum while his bark hat rested low over his eyes. Sprig sorted berries beside her with his petal scarf bright. He popped one into his mouth with a grin. Stitch mended his vine net with careful stitches as his quiet smile softened his face. Flint whittled a small bird from oak while his twig beard swayed with each stroke. Twirl danced in slow circles with her leaf boots tapping. She hummed a tune to herself. Elena spoke with a gentle and warm voice. The shadow feels tougher today. Patch nodded over his twigs. Woods feel it too. Sprig swallowed a berry and shivered slightly. Cold sneaky now. Stitch tied a knot and glanced up. Nets catching less. Flint smoothed his bird and murmured low. Roots are slowing. Twirl spun to a stop with a quiet sigh. Lights dimmer. Elena's kind spirit lifted as she sang a soft note. Verdel's hum flickered. The thicket trembled. Her crew gathered with hope stirring in their eyes. Patch set his twigs aside and rubbed his hands. Fire needs more cheer. Sprig hopped up with a chirpy grin. I'll find sweet berries since they warm us. Stitch slung his net higher with a steady nod. Mist's thick. I'll trap more. Flint tucked his bird away and stood tall. I'll carve faster because roots need it. Twirl lifted her twig with a gentle twirl. I'll dance brighter so light grows. Elena stirred the stew and smiled softly. We'll hold it together. Her crew bustled as the shroud coiled around them. Verdel's wood sighed with their efforts. Her refuge strained under the chill. They worked swiftly in the dim light. Patch piled twigs until the fire flared. Sprig scattered berries to bring sweetness rising. Stitch tossed his net and watched mist curl into its vines. Flint carved roots until sap flowed free. Twirl danced with her twig spinning gracefully. Elena sang with a gentle and strong voice. Verdel's hum pulsed through the thicket. The shroud pressed with a chill that made trees droop. The thicket glowed as cozy warmth spread. Her kind voice led the way. Her crew smiled with hope shimmering in their hearts. Fernwick's song wavered under the growing mist. Light flickered faintly in the dimness. In the village, Mara paced her cottage where silver threads lay tangled under a dim lantern. Elena's haven burned her heart. Villagers missed the girl's presence. Too sweet, she hissed with her sharp eyes blazing. She pulled a spool of black thread that felt dark and cold. She spun it tightly with a quiet murmur. "Fade her," she said as her loom clicked with a steady rhythm. The grey shroud swelled into a thicker mist that drifted from her cottage. It curled through Verdel's edge until the woods shivered under its touch. Her jealousy flared with each turn of the wheel. "No songs left," she whispered with a twisted smile. She poured a jar of black mist that swirled into the air. Her shadow grew as her spite deepened. Elena's light dimmed under the growing chill. The thicket faltered as Patch's fire sputtered in the cold. Sprig's berries dulled with a faint sheen. Stitch's net sagged under the weight of mist. Flint's roots slowed their flow of sap. Twirl's dance wobbled with a tired step. Elena's song trembled as Verdel's hum weakened. The shroud surged with a biting chill. Trees sagged under its weight. Elena's gentle spirit stayed firm as she murmured quietly, "It's stronger now." Her crew huddled close around her. Patch stoked the flames with steady hands. Sprig tossed berries into the blaze. Stitch wove his net tighter with focus. Flint carved deeper into the roots. Twirl spun her twig with a gentle bounce. Elena sang with all her heart as kindness pulsed through her voice. The shroud pushed back with a coiling mist. The thicket dimmed as cozy warmth faded. Verdel's song faltered under the strain. Mara's whisper tightened its grip. The woods groaned with a heavy sigh. Elena's gentle refuge quivered as her fabulous fight dimmed. Hope strained against the looming night. Midday sun flickered faintly over Verdel as the enchanted woods lay cloaked in a heavy gray shroud that dimmed the thicket's glow. Elena knelt by the fading fire with her patched skirt brushing the moss. She stirred the pot with a gentle hand. Her kind heart pulsed with quiet strength. Mara's mist thickened around them, but her spirit refused to break. Patch piled twigs with a gruff sigh while his bark hat shadowed his furrowed brow. Sprig sat close with his petal scarf drooping. He clutched a berry in his hands. Stitch mended his vine net with slow stitches as his quiet smile vanished from his face. Flint carved a spoon with steady hands while his twig beard stayed still. Twirl rested on a root with her leaf boots unmoving. Her twig lay limp in her lap. Elena spoke with a gentle and firm voice. "The shadow's strong, but we're stronger." Patch nodded over the fire. "Woods need us now." Sprig squeezed his berry and murmured low, "Cold's winning." Stitch pulled a thread tight and looked up. "Net's heavy today." Flint smoothed his spoon and whispered softly, "Roots feel it too." Twirl lifted her head with a faint smile. "We'll dance it back." Elena's kind spirit warmed as she hummed a soft tune. Verdel's hum flickered. The thicket quivered. Her crew leaned in with hope stirring in their hearts. Patch rubbed his hands and stood tall. "Fire's low. We need more warmth." Sprig rose with a small grin. "I'll gather sweet moss. It cheers us." Stitch slung his net with a steady nod. "Mist's thick. I'll weave it away." Flint tucked his spoon away and flexed his fingers. "I'll carve light. Roots want it." Twirl stood with a gentle twirl. "I'll spin joy. Light lifts." Elena stirred the stew and smiled softly. "Kindness wins. We'll turn it." Her crew bustled as the shroud pressed closer. Verdel's woods trembled. Her refuge fought to hold steady. They worked swiftly in the dim haze. Patch piled twigs until the fire flared anew. Sprig scattered moss with a sweet scent rising. Stitch tossed his net high and trapped more mist in its vines. Flint carved roots until sap flowed bright. Twirl danced in slow spins with her twig swirling. Elena sang with a gentle and strong voice. Verdel's hum pulsed faintly through the thicket. The shroud coiled tighter as trees sagged under its chill. Her kind song wove through the air. The crew smiled with hope glimmering. The thicket glowed as cozy warmth spread. Fernwick's song flickered. Mist faltered and light seeped through. In the village, Mara hunched over her loom with silver threads dark under a sputtering lantern. Elena's fight burned her. Villagers hummed her melodies. Too sweet, she hissed as her sharp eyes blazed. She pulled a spool of black thread and spun it fast. Fade her, she muttered while her loom clicked louder. The grey shroud swelled into a thick fog that rolled from her cottage. It swept through Verdel's edge with a shivering gust. Her jealousy roared in her chest. No songs left, she said with a sharpened smile. She poured a jar of black mist. Fog thickened around her. Her shadow surged as her spite peaked. Elena's light dimmed under the growing chill. The thicket wavered as Patch's fire sputtered under the fog. Sprig's moss dulled with a faint sheen. Stitch's net sagged with heavy mist. Flint's roots slowed their sap's flow. Twirl's dance stumbled with a tired step. Elena's song trembled as Verdel's hum faded. The shroud surged with a biting chill. Trees drooped under its weight. Elena's gentle spirit stayed firm as she murmured quietly, "Now we push." Her crew huddled close. Patch stoked the fire with steady hands. Sprig tossed moss into the blaze. Stitch wove his net tighter with focus. Flint carved deeper into the roots. Twirl spun her twig with a gentle bounce. Elena sang with all her heart. Kindness pulsed through her voice. The shroud pushed back with a coiling mist. The thicket dimmed as cozy glow faltered. Verdel's song weakened. Mara's fog tightened its grip. Woods groaned with strain. Elena's gentle refuge quaked as her fabulous fight strained. Elena's kind voice rose as she hummed brighter. Patch's fire flared with new strength. Sprig's moss sweetened the air. Stitch's net lifted with captured mist. Flint's roots shone with golden light. Twirl's dance glowed with joy. Verdel's hum surged through the thicket. The shroud cracked as mist swirled away. Light broke through the gloom. Her crew cheered with bright smiles. Elena's gentle song turned the tide. Hope bloomed in their hearts. Woods sighed with relief. Her fabulous kindness shone as night eased into peace. Afternoon light barely touched Verdel as the enchanted woods lay under a thick grey fog, the thicket's glow a faint flicker in the gloom. Elena stood by the fire with her patched skirt brushing the moss. She stirred the pot with a gentle hand as her kind heart pulsed with quiet courage. Mara's mist pressed its heaviest yet, but her song held strong. Patch piled twigs with a gruff huff, his bark hat low over his tired eyes. Sprig sat close with his petal scarf wilting. He clutched a berry in his small hands. Stitch wove his vine net with steady fingers, his quiet smile long faded. Flint carved a small bird from oak with slow care, his twig beard drooping. Twirl rested against a root with her leaf boots still. Her twig lay quiet in her lap. Elena spoke with a gentle and firm voice. The shadow's at its worst now. We can still turn it back. Patch nodded over the fire. Woods are counting on us. Sprig squeezed his berry and murmured softly, "Cold's too strong." Stitch pulled a thread tight and glanced up. Nets full of mist. Flint smoothed his bird and whispered low, "Roots feel heavy." Twirl lifted her head with a faint smile. "We'll dance it away." Elena's kind spirit warmed as she hummed a soft tune. Verdel's hum flickered weakly. The thicket quaked. Her crew gathered with hope clinging in their eyes. Patch rubbed his hands and stood tall. "Fire needs all we've got." Sprig rose with a small grin. "I'll find the sweetest moss to lift us." Stitch slung his net higher with a steady nod. "Mist's thick. I'll trap every bit." Flint tucked his bird away and stretched his fingers. "I'll carve light until the roots shine." Twirl stood with a gentle twirl. "I'll spin joy until it glows." Elena stirred the stew and smiled softly. "Kindness will win. We'll push it through." Her crew bustled as the fog coiled tighter. Verdel's woods groaned under the strain. Her refuge teetered on the edge. They worked swiftly in the dim haze. Patch piled twigs until the fire flared bright. Sprig scattered moss with a sweet scent rising. Stitch tossed his net and caught more mist in its vines. Flint carved roots until sap flowed golden. Twirl danced in slow spins with her twigs swirling gracefully. Elena sang with a gentle and strong voice that wove through the fog. Verdel's hum pulsed faintly through the thicket. Trees sagged as the shroud tightened its grip. Her kind song spread warmth. Her crew smiled with hope flickering in their hearts. Fernwick's song wavered under the heavy mist. Light struggled to break through. In the village, Mara stood at her loom with silver threads dark under a dying lantern. Elena's fight seared her soul. Villagers hummed the girl's melodies louder each day. "Too sweet," she hissed with her sharp eyes blazing. She pulled her last spool of black thread and spun it fast. "Fade her now," she muttered as her loom clicked with a harsh rhythm. The gray fog swelled into a dense cloud that surged from her cottage. It rolled through Verdel's edge with a chilling gust. Her jealousy roared through every fiber. "No songs ever," she whispered with a twisted smile. She poured her final jar of black mist. The cloud thickened into a storm that swept over the woods. Her shadow loomed as her spite reached its peak. Elena's light dimmed under the crushing chill. The thicket shuddered as Patch's fire sputtered in the storm. Sprig's moss dulled to a faint glow. Stitch's net sagged under the weight of fog. Flint's roots slowed their golden flow. Twirl's dance faltered with a weary step. Elena's song trembled as Verdel's hum faded to a whisper. The fog surged with a biting cold. Trees bowed low under its force. Elena's gentle spirit stood firm as she murmured quietly, "One more try." Her crew huddled close with eyes wide. Patch stoked the flames with steady hands. Sprig tossed moss into the blaze. Stitch wove his net tighter with focus. Flint carved deeper into the roots. Twirl spun her twig with a gentle bounce. Elena sang with all her heart as kindness pulsed through her voice. The fog pushed back with a howling gust. The thicket dimmed as warmth faltered. Verdel's song weakened under the strain. Mara's cloud tightened its grip. The woods groaned with a heavy sigh. Elena's gentle refuge quivered at its limit. Her fabulous fight strained under the storm. Hope clung by a thread as night loomed dark. Twilight faded over Verdel as the enchanted woods trembled under Mara's thick grey storm, the thicket's faint glow nearly lost in the fog. Elena stood by the fire with her patched skirt brushing the moss. She stirred the pot with a gentle hand as her kind heart pulsed with unshaken hope. The storm roared its fiercest, but her song refused to break. Patch piled twigs with a gruff huff while his bark hat shadowed his steady gaze. Sprig knelt close with his petal scarf clinging damply to his shoulders. He held a berry tight in his small hands. Stitch wove his vine net with firm fingers as his quiet smile flickered back. Flint carved a small bird from oak with calm strokes while his twig beard lifted slightly. Twirl danced in slow circles with her leaf boots tapping softly. She clutched her twig with a faint grin. Elena spoke with a gentle and resolute voice. The shadow's at its strongest. We'll shine it away together. Patch nodded over the fire. Woods need us now. Sprig tucked his berry away and murmured softly. Cold's tough, but we're tougher. Stitch tied a knot and looked up with a quiet nod. Net's ready to catch it all. Flint smoothed his bird and whispered low. Roots want light. Twirl spun her twig with a gentle smile. We'll dance it free. Elena's kind spirit glowed as she hummed a soft tune. Verdel's hum flickered faintly. The thicket pulsed with her crew's quiet strength. Hope glimmered in their eyes. Patch rubbed his hands and stood tall. Fire's our heart. Let's make it blaze. Sprig rose with a chirpy grin. I'll pile sweet moss until it sings. Stitch slung his net high with a steady nod. Mist's thick. I'll trap every wisp. Flint tucked his bird away and stretched his fingers. I'll carve until roots shine bright. Twirl lifted her twig with a joyful twirl. I'll spin light until it soars. Elena stirred the stew and smiled warmly. Kindness will break it. We'll sing it through. Her crew bustled as the fog coiled tightest. Verdel's woods groaned under the strain. Her refuge teetered on the brink. They worked swiftly in the dim haze. Patch piled twigs until the fire flared golden. Sprig scattered moss with a sweet scent lifting the air. Stitch tossed his net and caught the fog in its vines. Flint carved roots until sap flowed like liquid light. Twirl danced with her twigs swirling in graceful spins. Elena sang with a gentle and powerful voice that wove through the storm. Verdel's hum pulsed stronger through the thicket. Trees shivered as the fog pushed its last gust. Her kind song spread warmth with her crew's efforts blooming. Hope surged as the shroud faltered. Light broke softly through the gloom. In the village, Mara slumped at her loom with silver threads limp under a dying lantern. Elena's song pierced her. Villagers sang it louder. Too sweet, she hissed with her sharp eyes dimming. She pulled her last spool of black thread and spun it fast. Fade her now, she muttered as her loom clicked weakly. The grey storm swelled one final time from her cottage. It rolled through Verdel's edge with a chilling gust. Her jealousy flared. No songs ever. She poured her last jar of black mist. Fog thickened, her shadow loomed, Mara's smile twisted, her spite peaked, Elena's light flickered, then flared. The thicket blazed as Patch's fire roared high. Sprig's moss sweetened the air with a golden scent. Stitch's net swelled and burst the fog apart. Flint's roots glowed with radiant sap. Twirl's dance spun a circle of light. Elena's song soared with a gentle and mighty strength. Verdel's hum surged through the woods. The storm cracked with a final howl. Fog swirled away as trees lifted their branches. Her kind voice broke the shroud, her crew cheered, light spilled, cozy warmth flooded. Fernwick's song rang clear, the shroud vanished, Verdel breathed free, Mara's whisper dissolved, woods glowed, Elena's gentle refuge stood firm, her fabulous kindness triumphed, hope bloomed, night softened. Mara's loom stilled, her threads dulled, her cottage dimmed, villagers sang, Elena's refuge shone, Patch smiled, Sprig laughed, Stitch grinned, Flint nodded, Twirl spun, Elena's song lingered, Verdel blossomed, her gentle tale ended, kindness won, woods hummed, peace settled.